Welcome to KSOK Uncensored. Today I have the privilege of speaking with Jerry Carlson, the dedicated owner and publisher of Buy Local magazine, a fixture in the Clackamas County since 1993. With a compelling life story and a strong presence within the community, Jerry's journey of leadership and service serve as an inspiration to us all. Jerry, welcome to KSOK Uncensored. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to tell people the way that we met is pretty unorthodox. So I reside in Clackamas County and I get one of these magazines every month and happen to look on the back where you put a PSA out there all about your experience with the carnivore diet and really calling people to action to look at labels with what they're eating and your story with you and your wife being able to have such success with this diet, getting off of big pharma and really getting away from big food. I picked up the phone and called you right then and there. You actually answered, and we had a 20-minute conversation. And here we are today recording this episode. And so I just want to thank you for being so tangible and open to share your story.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and I always, you have no idea how many calls I get from, like elderly people calling me up,
Mm.
asking me for advice on who they could call for this type of business, that sort of thing that they can't find advertising in my magazine, and it's almost like I should call it Jerry's List instead of Buy Local magazine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had quite a few calls, and some of my little editorial things I've done over the years have kind of sparked quite a bit of interest. I hold no bones back about being a Christian, and that it's very instrumental in my life. It's very instrumental in how I very started the magazine, for crying out loud. That's a whole nother story in its own.
Yeah,
But
and that's what drew me to you, Jerry, is I liked how bold you were, and you can tell you're not afraid to go there and to put the truth forward, and so many people are, and that is really the main driver on why I picked up the phone and called you. I'm like, I need to talk to somebody who is unafraid of the potential backlash that can come with speaking the truth. And I know offline here, we spoke about the fact that in November of 75, you were a teen delinquent and headed in a dark direction when something happened. Could you share more details about that moment and how that influenced your life path?
Oh, absolutely. I was a biology geek as a kid. I was really good at school, but I was very uh, in unprepared for tenure when I got into high school and whatnot, with teachers who just quite didn't care, and I kind of fell to this wayside. I started hanging out with the wrong people and the wrong crowd, and because I, you know, believed so much in science, that there wasn't a whole lot of room for God in there, and uh, and and so it was I was considered myself an atheist. In fact, I used to actually make fun of people who had any kind of religious or Christian belief. And anyway, one night I was walking home from a friend's house, and it was a bright, clear night, and it was really odd. And I have no idea why this has anything to do with any of it, but there seemed to be an owl following me all the way home. It was like a 2 mile walk, and it kept landing from tree to tree as I went, and it was quite bizarre, and I thought that was awfully weird. And so I got to bed, and my parents had just went to bed, and I was 16 years old in November of 1975, and I laid in bed, and I could hear my parents say goodnight to each other, and then a giant voice just came over me that just said, "Listen to me,
Wow.
listen to me." And then the most bizarre part of it all. It was like I was raptured. I was pulled out of my body, like floating through space, and I could see this eye, almost like the eye on the back of a dollar bill,
Wow.
like staring at me. And it just like I could see the earth, just going farther and farther away. And it just kind of taught me the lesson of how insignificant I actually am.
Mm. Wow.
And then, just was suddenly boom, laying back in bed. And I didn't hardly sleep that whole entire night. I just laid there crying. I was petrified. And it took me months to figure out. I went to school the next day, told the psychology teacher about it and another teacher, and they were both just kind of blown away by it. They wanted to
Yeah.
know how much pot I'd smoked. So it was a few months later, I met a very nice gentleman who asked me if I believed in God. And I said, well, by the way, I pretty much do. I told him the story of what happened. And he went in his house and he brought me out a Good News Bible. That was on
Mm.
a Saturday morning. I had it read by Sunday night. I read the
Whoa.
entire thing. But I was a very good reader, back in those days. And it was near the very end where I came to the point where Jesus's main point to all of his followers was to listen to him.
Mm.
And it was like bingo. I
Yeah.
wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't having a mental health crisis when all that happened, whatever, because that was something going through my head. I just thought maybe I was losing my marbles. But it was so technically just awe-inspiring to me.
Mm.
It was very, very much so. And it made me understand at that point, after reading the Good News Bible, that was the very message I was being told. And although I was one hell of a hoodlum, I was into criminal behavior. I was hanging out with all the wrong people. I was doing all the wrong things. God still believed in me
Mm.
enough to come and save me, even though I didn't
Wow.
deserve it one iota, one iota. And I hope that that's the message that I can bring to other people, that God isn't there for the righteous. He's there for the sinners to
Right.
bring them back to righteousness.
Oh, wow. That is an incredible story, almost surreal, I can imagine, as you were going through that. I'm curious how your personal beliefs and values have shaped your approach to running a local magazine and being a leader in your community.
Well, it's kind of funny. The actual name of my company is Family Values Magazine. That was inspired in 1992, before I even started the magazine, when Dan Quayle, as vice president, was being castrated by the national media by
Mm.
bringing up something about family values, and that was just
It-
the buzz in the whole media was just how hateful and all that kind of stuff it was, and it was just like, are these people from outer space? I mean, I
right.
was Mr. Family Man. At that point, I was my kid's basketball coach and baseball coach, and I was I was almost like the surrogate parent for half the other kids on the teams. And it was just my way when I started my magazine. I came up with the idea. Values for the entire family, was my what the whole thing was. And wouldn't that be kind of a cute little twist on the
Yeah.
term, is calling it Family Values Magazine. And it'd be great way to thumb my nose at the little political correctness crowd out there that were trying to vilify that whole concept. And
Right.
and anyway, and honestly, over the years, I've actually lost some revenue from people who being in the Portland, Oregon area, were so radical that they
Yeah.
just couldn't handle that, even though it was a play on words. And I really wasn't, being politically motivated or whatever in what we were doing, just simply refused to advertise with me. On the other hand,
Mm.
untold number of people, you know, came along and actually were inspired to be part of my business. And anyway, and a couple of years ago during the BLM riots and all that stuff, I wrote something very impactful, that was pointing out that looting and arson and vandalism and whatnot are not legal acts of protest.
Mm.
They are
Yeah.
not legitimate acts of protest. And even uh, Martin Luther King Jr. would roll over in his grave if he knew what these
Right.
idiots were doing. And anyway, and the activists came out of the crowd, and they tried to cancel culture me.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
did lose some clients from that. But on the other hand, many people came forward, hundreds of emails, phone calls. In fact, I have almost 100 voicemails saved to this day from people who called me thanking me for making those
Mm.
points. And many
Yes.
of them were from like Eastern Europe. It was
Oh,
like they had a
wow.
meeting and they all said the same thing. They all said, or many of them said, that we left our country because there was no rule of law. It was so corrupt, and we came to America because they believed in rule of law. Where do we move to next?
Right. Right.
It was very awe-inspiring.
I think
And
that's incredible. Do you listen to those voicemails when you have a tough day or when you get a lot of backlash?
no, not so much. I actually don't get a whole lot of backlash anymore. I think the haters have all figured out
Yeah.
I'm an irreparable soul, so they're not going to change my way of thinking, and they probably just cancel culture me by either just ignoring the whole darn thing, or they
Right.
just moved on. Movedon.org,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Well, I think that's
but
incredible, Jerry. And even if you don't go back and listen to them, they're there. And
yeah,
I know the Slavic community, big community in Clackamas County. I know quite a few of them, and they don't want to see in the United States what they left, right, in Ukraine and Russia, Romania. So they don't want to see that here, and they're very concerned because they are seeing that play out here. And so
oh yeah,
I completely get it. I have Vietnamese neighbors, as you know, the Happy Valley area, lots of Vietnamese. We have South Korean. They don't want to see it either. They all left communist countries, China, right? So
right.
I would say the majority of people that are very concerned in this area are either immigrants or their family immigrated here from the BS that we're really starting to see here in the United States. So I commend you. So I want to ask you, what do you say to business owners who are afraid to do what you've done? And I really wish, Jerry, that I would have been reading these all along. This one, for some reason, just caught my eye. I happened to look on the back of the magazine. I'd love to go back and read all of the PSAs you've put out there. But what do you say to either? Yeah, I'll even go there with churches, wimpy pastoral staff, wimpy business leaders, business owners that are afraid to say how they feel within reason. What is your words of encouragement to them?
Um,
Or
that
discouragement. I don't know.
Yeah,
Whatever you
well,
think.
actually, I always, encourage people to speak their mind and let the let things fall where they may.
Right.
That it's the haters are gonna come out, but they're the minority. You know, they're the very vocal minority, but they're still the minority, and they're radicals, and that you're not going to have any positive impact with them. And the bottom line is the majority of them aren't going to be your customer anyway. So
Right.
don't worry about them. Overlook them. Don't let the minority dictate your major beliefs. you know?
Yes,
So
yes.
it's very tough for a lot of business owners, you know, and with all the stuff that went on during BLM and whatnot, and with the Antifa riots and everything. A lot of them are afraid of retribution. Somebody's going to come bust in their windows or whatever else and whatever, and because you know that's just it. The radicals, you know, claim to be so um, tolerant, but they're the most intolerant group
Yeah.
that has ever come forward, you know, in all of history. It is just ridiculous. And but again, you just got to remember they are the minority, and the
Right.
majority believe that, you know, right is right and wrong is wrong, and you know, and you just have to keep the faith.
Right. I completely agree with you. And I really feel like religion and prayer have a lot to do with it. We need to pray for direction. And I really feel like God has used you since that moment
Oh
in
yeah,
1975, used you in so many ways. But I want to ask you, speaking of the carnivore diet, I do want to touch on that today because I
sure.
teased the audience by talking about your PSA here. Um, I think it's incredible. I've shared with you, I've done keto for the majority of the past 5 years, and had success with that and just feel better. That's really my goal, is just feel great, have a lot of energy and a sharp mind. And I wanna hear, though, your story, you and your wife's story, in your experience with the carnivore diet.
Well, you know, 22 years ago or whatnot, we tried Atkins and had tremendous success with it. And I was working out constantly and whatnot too, and shred a whole bunch of weight, and we really liked it. But then I don't know, we either hit a plateau or whatnot, but you
Mhm.
know, just kind of fell off of that mindset and that dedication, and I think it was because, you know, I think too there were so many things that tried to buy into that, you know, that are
Right.
you know, Atkins bars and all this kind of stuff that are way too
Yeah.
high in carbs, and you know, and there's just stuff, people throwing things out there and calling them Atkins and whatever, and it
Mhm.
became more of a marketing thing for them, and so we kind of got away from it. And you know, I a year ago I was the fattest I've ever been, and I had to have a hip replacement surgery.
Mm.
And anyway, I'm 43 pounds lighter today than I was then.
Wow.
And I'm probably gonna still get down about another 10 more pounds as you know, and I'm on a pretty good workout schedule again, you know, doing exercises that, you know, I hadn't done. Got my 7-year-old wife doing sprints and everything else too, you know,
Incredible.
and it's changed our lives. We're really happy with uh, this diet. I mean, it's not just the diet; it's the whole other lifestyle. But
It is.
you know, during Thanksgiving, you know, we're in amongst people, you know, eating pie and mashed potatoes and gravy and whatever like that, and I had turkey and ham and some deviled
Yep.
eggs, you know,
Good for you.
and and I was full, and you know, the cravings aren't there anymore for it. So you know, I just
Yeah,
look at it, you know, after doing tons and tons and tons of research about the whole thing, that carbs and sugar are poison,
they really
and
are.
so is alcohol. And so if you just look at it, that putting that in your body is the equivalent of putting poison in your body. The repercussions of it just aren't worth it. So
Jerry,
it's really easy to just turn away from it.
what do you think about the government's most recent food pyramid that they put out? I think it was either
Oh,
2021 or 2022, but did you see that?
Yeah, I've seen them over the years, and with my research, I found out too that all that was the work of the major tobacco companies who, back in the 70s, when they weren't allowed to advertise on television anymore, decided they were going to be losing market share. So they all divest or invested into the major food companies,
Hmm.
which then all of a sudden magically lard and animal fat was bad to cook in,
Right.
but seed oil and whatnot was wonderful, and that canola oil is completely a marketing term for
Mm.
rapeseed oil, which is
Right.
mostly grown up in Canada. That's why it's, that's where it got its new name from. But who the heck wants to eat rapeseed oil? But it was it was an industrial lubricant to begin with, and people
Yeah.
are putting that into their bodies these days. And so, but the whole thing is completely manufactured by politics and by the money. Follow the money. And,
Exactly.
there's not a lot of invested interest by doctors to get people on a proper human diet when
Right.
that means that they're not going to be coming in to get their statins and all that other stuff, which the more I find out about cholesterol, that's a whole nother scam in itself. And
Right.
so,
Right.
you know, did you
I
know
think
that
that's amazing.
you're 8 times more uh, potential of having a major heart condition if your cholesterol level is only 100 than
Oh,
if
that's
it's 300. 300, you have maybe 1% more than if you're perfect at 200. But a lot of people at 200, particularly elderly people, they start getting dementia. They start getting
Mhm.
Alzheimer's and whatnot because
Right.
there's not enough cholesterol in their body to be able to
Right.
keep their mind working correctly. It's a hormone.
Right.
It's actually created by the body, but you need to add more in. So anyway, like I said, I was a biology geek as a kid, so I completely get myself wrapped up in all this, and I understand the science of it, but
Yeah.
it's really sad that the healthcare industry is well, we found out during COVID that that they're full of crap, and they give us information based on politics, not on health.
I want to ask you what you think about this statement. The money is in the disease, not the cure. What are your thoughts when you hear that?
Oh, definitely. Did you know that there's some statins that will increase your likelihood of becoming diabetic by
Oh my
25%?
gosh. I had no idea.
So, yeah, anyway, like I said, I've done a lot of research, but that means so they get you locked in on the statins and then they get you diabetic, then they got you locked in on the diabetes medicines. Wow, what a
So that
great
brings me
business model.
to it is a great business model. And that brings me to aren't you and your wife now off, or at least your wife is now off of some big pharma medications before
Oh yeah,
the diet
she was on
change?
blood pressure. She was on blood pressure meds, statins, and diabetes meds. Within a
Wow.
month of this diet, uh, totally off. She just had her blood work done 3 weeks ago. Her triglycerides level has dropped in half, and
Wow.
it's supposed to go up by eating meat, and
Right, right.
and her insulin levels are well within normal parameters for the first time in 20 years.
Amazing.
So I've never really had many problems with that, except for I had way too much visceral fat when I was at my heaviest last year. And it was, I quit snoring within the first 2 days of starting this diet, believe it or
Wow. That's a big
there's a lot of
change.
people have sleep apnea, gets cured from all this, and
Yes.
arthritis and a lot of other things. It's absolutely wonderful. There's no, there's some doctors that are on YouTube and whatnot that you can watch a lot of videos, like Dr. Barry and Dr. Chafee, who've done a lot of research, and a lot of people who follow them, have their own YouTube channels just chronologing their
Right.
miraculous results from this. Some people have lost 100 to 200 pounds or more,
Wow.
and
Wow.
just completely changed their lives. And anyway, it's quite eye opening. So
Yeah.
I just encourage people, go binge watch YouTube about it before you ever start it. For one thing, it'll
Right.
teach you what to eat and how to eat it, and so that it makes it easy to not fall off the wagon. First thing we had to do is
Yes.
unload our pantry and our cupboards and our refrigerator with all the crap with sugar and soy and all the other stuff, and just get it out of here. And
Yeah.
that it takes the temptation away, and we just replaced it with stuff that we actually read the ingredients. It's
Yes,
pretty
I know.
pretty
Looking at the
amazing.
label, it is. Once we start looking, I'm at the point where I know my sister and I are trying to be really strict right before Christmas, where we're not eating anything that comes from a bag or from a box or that has more than 3 ingredients,
Yeah.
right? So we're really trying to eat that whole food way. Unless it's spices, then I can kind of go nuts on the spices. But I'm with you on that. I feel like so many people, they are just reading, the bag might say gluten free or the bag might say keto, but then you look at the carbohydrates and this supposed keto snack has 36 carbs in it. And really, you can't go into ketosis eating that way. So it's incredible, but I like your approach. You do need to know what you're getting into when you're doing it, and it's just because the preparation. You need to be prepared. If you're going to make the change, you can't be on in ketosis one day and then go eat high carbs the next. You're just never going to achieve results. So I
Yeah,
love your
absolutely.
story, Jerry. We definitely need to do a part 2 because there's so much to unpack here. We have 2 minutes left, but we can go back and talk about really after you had your awakening in 1975. We should do a part 2 and talk about really what steps you took from there. How did that go over with your family, with your friends? How did you turn it around when you're at school? So let's
Yeah.
work on that. Let's make that happen. But just a little bit over a minute left here. Want to ask you just one last question. How can
Okay.
someone stand out as a leader within their community? Just a few small things that they can do to make a change.
Well, they can stand up for what is right. I had to back out of my membership of one of the local chambers because they had uh, trans night, for with a bunch of uh, what do you call them? Trans, what are they called? The men who dress as women, and they were inviting kids. It's a family event and whatever. And it's like, why would anybody who wants to dress up like a man want to uh, be around kids? And I told the chamber, I'm sorry, but I'm done. If you're going to promote that, that's not family friendly. That is not even legal, ethical at all. So if that's going to be your attitude about it, well, then we don't share the same values, and I think that the majority of business owners uh, feel the same way. It's just most people cower because they get labeled if they bring it up, and you gotta stand for what's right, and
Exactly.
doing what's right for kids is always right.
You're spot on. I think what you're talking about is the drag queen story hour where they're doing that at they're doing it at public libraries and so many
Right.
businesses, coffee shops where it's family friendly supposedly, right? Completely
Right.
inappropriate. Next level inappropriate and good for you for putting your foot down and I know we're at time here, but I just want to know real quick, how did that go over? Did they make a change on their end or not? Did they continue on with the BS that we see here in the Northwest?
Oh no, they basically tried to tell me, that it's it's not it's not part of their uh, agenda about promoting all this kind of thing, but
Mm.
but they weren't, but they didn't want to accept the fact that the drag queen outfit that was promoting this event has specifically plastered all over their marketing materials that families welcome, and
Yeah.
that they're, and I said, hey, adults can pick and choose. They can come and go depending on what
Right.
they do. But when people start dragging their kids to these things and they've got to experience this, then that's just off the charts. That's off the,
Yeah.
and that's out of bounds. And if you're not going to stand up for kids, we don't, we don't have a business relationship anymore.
Yeah. Good for
And
you, Jerry.
and it's and I've been a member of that chamber for 30 years.
Wow.
So and and they probably call me intolerant, but hey, like I said, when it comes to messing with kids, I am extraordinarily intolerant.
Good for you. We all should be. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for being bold. Again, that's what attracted me to reaching out to you and having you on KSOK Uncensored. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We will see you next Thursday. And hopefully, we have a part 2 with Jerry here soon. There's a lot more to his story. Have a great night.